Good afternoon, Miss. My name is Mabel Berrios, and today we are going to talk about phonology. But we wonder what phonology is. Phonology is the sound patterns of the language. In phonology, we have morphemes, phonemes, and allophones. The pronunciation of morpheme, often certain morphemes are pronounced differently depending on their context. And we will introduce a way to describing this variation, usually inconscious. Phonological rules. We begin with some examples in English, and then we are move on and examples from other languages. For example, we have the pronunciation of the plurals. In this case, we have 4 columns, the column A, B, C, and D. The column A, the words are call, bar, spa, and boys. The rule said that the final sound of the plural nouns from column A is a Z sound. For example, calls. The column B, the words are cap, cat, bag, and cough. The rule said for the column B, the plural ending is an S sound. For example, cats. And the column C, the words are boss, bosh, buzz, and garage. And the rule said for the column C, it's as. For example, bosses. The column D, child, ox, mouse, and sheep. It's a different rule because in this rule, we need to memorize individually each word. For example, child is children. Ox, the plural is oxen. Mouse, the plural is mice. And sheep, the plural is sheep. It doesn't change. Now we have the allomorph. The allomorph. The allomorph is the more technical term for a variation of a morpheme. For example, the allomorph Z, the environment is after a voice no sibilant segment. The allomorph Z, the environment is after voiceless non-sibilant segments. And the allomorph as, the environment said after sibilant segment. A phoneme is the phonological unit of language. Phonemes are the basic form of a sound has sense mentally rather than spoken or eared. Each phoneme a mental abstraction in itself. It manifests usually by one or more sounds called allophones, which are the perceivable sounds corresponding to the phoneme in various environments. For example, the phoneme P is pronounced with the aspiration allophone PH, like PH, in pit, but without aspiration P in spit. Phonological rules operate on phonemes to make explicit which allophones are pronounced in which environments. Now we have the allophones. Do you remember? After we, before we see the allomorph. Now we are going to see allophones. The allophones is a nasal and oral vowels, words and non-words. For example, here we have the words be, bid, bin, lay, place, and lem. And how we can pronounce these words, how we need to pronounce this word. And the noun words like be, how you can see, we see the sound. This is the sound of how we need to pronounce these words. This is an example. Now we are going to talk about distribution of aspirated voiceless stops. A syllable, we have three things: a syllable initial before a stressed vowel, after a syllable initial, and non-words. And here we have some words: and syllable initial before a stressed vowel. Some words are peel, till, and kill. After a syllable, spill, steal, skill. And the non-word, it's the pronunciation. A voiceless alveolar stops T allow with the following examples: spelling, tick, and stick. Phonemic representation, we have the form that we need to use to pronounce this word, and the phonemic representation. We have the phonemic representation and the phonetic representation. How we difference to these two representations, the phonemic and phonetics. We are going to see now. And here we have a map, a mind map about phonemes and how to find them. First of all, a phoneme is a minimal pair, two different words that differ in one sound at the same position. The two sounds that cause the word difference below the different phonemes. We said they are not physical sounds, and directly observable. They are abstract and mental representation of the phonological units of language. So we can see it, just we can listen. We say 11 monophthongal and 3 diphthongal vowels phonemes, and here we have some example of that. And here we have 2 words like bit and but, and how we need to pronounce. A particular realization or pronunciation of the phonemes is called a phone. So the pronunciation of a phoneme, it's called a phone. So when we pronounce a word, we make a phone. Now, we have that to distinguish graphically between a phoneme, and its allophones, we use slash. So this is the form we defer to the representations. When we talk about phonemes, in its allophones, we use slash, like this slash, to enclose phonemes and continue to use square brackets for allophones or phones. For example, here we have the 2 different sounds with brackets, and here we have the E sound with brackets and the allophones of the phonemes with slashes. Where oral vowels occur, nasal vowels do not occur, and vice versa. In this sense, the phonemes are said to complement each other or to be in complementary distribution. A distribution of oral and nasal vowels in English syllables. In final position before nasal consonants and before consonants. Oral vowels, for example, we can find in final position, yes, and we can find them before oral consonants. And but we don't find it before nasal consonants. in nasal vowel, for example, we do not find them in final position. We find them in before nasal consonants, and we don't find them before oral consonants. Distinctive features of phonemes. Featured vowels. These single features may be two vowels plus, which signifies its presence, and minus, which signifies its absence. For example, B is voices and P is voices. So it's minus voices and plus voices. Non-distinctive features. Aspiration is non-distinctive features of English consonant. It is a non-distinctive or redundant of predictable features. Some examples of features vowels are, for example, labia, the letter P, the sound P, it's labial, yes. P, B, and M, we use labial. And the P, B, and M, the P is minimus voices, but it's plus voices, and the M is two plus voices. For example, to nasal, the letter P is minus nasal, the B is minus nasal, but the M is plus nasal. And some example on non-distinctive features is bite, come from, speak, and dirty. The phonemic patterns may vary across languages. In English, oral and nasal vowels are allophones of one phonemes. Aspiration of voiceless stops further illustrates the asymmetry of the phonological systems or different languages. Aspiration in English is not a distinctive features because its present or absence is predictable. So we need to remember these rules. We have the rules of phonological too. And we have two principal rules, assimilation and dissimilation rules. Assimilation is one sounds become more like a nervy sound. This can occur either within a word or between words. In rapid speech, for example, handbag is often pronounced like the same sound, handbag. Okay, it's not pronounced like handbag now. It's pronounced handbag, like the same sound. And the assimilation rules, this type of rule refer the process whereby two neighboring sounds become less similar. An example of this rule of fricative assimilation. And this was featuring changing rules. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Continuing with the topic, my name is César Izaguirre, and I got topic with the second insertion in the listening rules. We have 2 points. In the first point, we have the process of inserting the consonant or vowel. It's called emphasis. In the second, the rules for forming regular plurals, possessive forms, and third person singular verb agreement in English, all recreating and offensive rules. From many to one, we have the fusion in the example. For example, in the fusion, we have the change leisure values, nasal consonant oscillation rules in Akan in English. And 2, add the new features, aspiration in English. 3, delay segment, and G, dilatation before nasals in English. And 4, add segments. sexual insertion in the English plural and past tenses. Now, we have the function of the phonologic rules. We have 3 points in there. The one, we have the fusion of the phonological rules is the grammar into provides the phonetic information necessary for the pronunciation of utterances. In the 2, we have the input into the P rules is the phonetics presentation. The P rules apply to the phonemic, strict and produce as output the phonetic presentation. The application of the rules in this rule is called derivation. And number 3, we have all the example of derivation we have so far considered show the application of just one phonological rule, except the plural and the past tenses rules. And slips of the tongues, evidence of phonological rules we all make speaks errors and they tell us interesting things about languages and this use. Consider the following speech errors. For example, in the intense utterances, we are going to send, stick in the mouth, a speech of tradition. In the actual utterance, go to sin, smoke in the teeth, excuse me, and great seduction. Splits of tongue are speech errors or mistakes in which we derivate in some way from an intensive utterance. Show phonological rules in action. Now, in the prosodic phonology is the syllable structure. We have 3 points. In the one, we have the words are composite of one or more syllables. A syllable is phonological, a unit composed of one or more phonemes. 2, every syllable has a nucleus, which is usually a vowel, but can we, but can be a syllable liquid or nasal. And a 3, the nucleus may be present and or followed by one or more phonemes, called the syllable on coda. In the word stress, one or more the syllable is very content word are stressed. A stressed syllable, which can be marked an acute accent. It's perceived as a more prominent than a unstressed syllable. For example, pervert, it's a noun. It's in my neighbor, it's a pervert. And pervert, it's a verb, as is don't pervert the idea. Subject, it's a noun, as in let's change the subject. And subject, it's a verb, as in health, subject to osteoarthritis.
I'm sorry, Cesar, but here in the word stress, we pronounce differently. For example, in pervert, we stress the first syllable, pervert. And the second word, pervert, we, like a verb, we stress the final syllable. And
Yeah,
subject, it's the same. Like a noun, we stress the first syllable, and subject, like a verb, we stress the final syllable.
yeah. All these depend on the sense. Okay, we have the sentence of the phrase stress. When words are combined into phrase and sentences, one syllable receives greater stress than all others. Just as there is only one primary stress is a word spoken in isolation. Only one of the vowels in a phrase or sentences receives a primary stress or accent. For example, we have the compound noun in an adjective plus noun. In the compound noun, we have the tritongular, red coat, hot dog, white house. In the adjective plus noun, we have the thick coat, but with a different accent, and red coat, hot dog, white house. All change or depend with the accent. Continue. Sorry. And the intonation, we discussed speech as phonetics featured in the reference to tone languages and intonation languages, and not its role in determining meaning. We can now see that pitch is also a phonetic feature in the tone languages such as Chinese, Thai, and Akan. We refer to these relative pitches as constructed tones. In non-tongue languages such as English, pitch still plays an important role, but only in the form of the speech contour or in contour of the phrase or the sentences. In the sequential constraints or phonemes, we have the phonemes constraints. Have there's basic the syllable, the word that is only the cluster that can begin the syllable can begin a word, and only a cluster that can end and a syllable can end the word. The limitations of sequences or segments are called phonotactic constructions. The lexical gaps we have two times. One is the lexical gaps. This trait is a word in the languages that coexist because it follows the grammatical rules in the languages, but is in non-existence. And for example, the Indonesian word mekolek describes the trick of taping from behind of the opposite shoulder of another person to confuse them. Sadly, there is no English equivalent for the word. And the second, next. Next. Thank you. And the second lexical gums, we have the accidental gums. It's a not exist word which is expected to exist given the hypothesized and morphological rules of the particular languages. In English, it is possible to derive nouns from verbs and by adding the suffixes o and tion to the verbal system. However, some such derivations do not exist, although there are not grammatical reasons for their. Why do phonological rules exist? Well, and we have 2 points in the A and B. In the A, abstract sequences may not difference with respect to their voice feature at the end of the word. We can see that the voices part of the past tenses rule changes the underlying from the past tense morpheme to the create a surface from the comfort to this general constraint. And B, sequences of obstructs the difference and most which I'm sorry and most with respect to voices are not permitted within English words. Thus, phonological rules exist because languages have general principles that constrain possible sequences of sounds. Then we have the optically theory. It has also been proposed that a universal set of phonological constraints exists, and that his set is ordered with some constraints being more highly ranking, and that others, the higher the constraint is ranking, the more influence is exerted to the languages. The difference in constraint rankings across languages are in some always parallel, and the different parameter setting that exist in the syntaxes of the different languages. Then the phonology analysis. Phonology analysis has two main objectives. Number one is to describe the phonological structure of the languages using the described tools of analysis and mind the identified phonological units and their pattern. And the second, to provide an explanation of phonological knowledge that underlines the pronunciation a compression of speech using specific phonology theories. For conclusion, well, in conclusion, we have 3 points, very basic, simple, and very interesting. For example, the one, we're learning that sounds pattern to answer languages become important because they teach us the pronunciation of the sounds in plural phonemes in allophones. 2, part of the learned is that there are segment insertion rules that help us to form regular plurals, possessive forms, and verbal agreement in singular in third person in English. Require a rule or emphasis. Number 3, there are 3 different lexical gaps, and the helps because it is a word in a languages that coexist because it follow the grammatical rules in the languages, but is not existent among them accidental lexical and lexical gaps. Thank you.
So thank you. This was our presentation. Thank you.